Okay, welcome everyone. Welcome to the Salem Township Planning Commission, February 22nd, 2021. We'll call the meeting to order slightly late at 7:34. We'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please, if you choose to. Okay, didn't we have a flag on here last time? Perfect. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Thanks, Paul.
No problem.
Roll call, please.
Okay, roll call. Bart Kahn.
Bart, you're muted, so
Oh, there he is.
you want to unmute yourself? There you go.
I was trying. I am here. Thank you.
Good, thank you.
Daryl will need to mute.
Daryl, I need to.
Sorry.
Yep. Daryl Lewandowski.
Daryl, your mute button is at the lower left-hand side of your screen.
And I'll come back. TJ McLaughlin.
Okay.
There's Daryl.
Here.
Oh, TJ's here. And Pam Merlot.
Here.
Bruce Reeve, I'm here. Robert Rizzo.
Here.
And Daniel McGarry.
Okay.
Yep, we can hear you now.
Now we have Daryl.
Okay. I'm on.
All present accounted for. Thank you.
Okay, very good.
Oh,
Okay. There you go.
okay. Thank you.
Okay, and Paul, we actually have attendees this time, so I have something to read the script, right, for electronic meetings?
Yes.
Okay. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Salem Township Planning Commission. We are using the Zoom webinar platform. For members of the public who have joined us by video or phone, your microphones are muted, but will be opened when appropriate. In order to minimize the disruptions to the meeting and connectivity problems, only members of the commission and staff have video. Applicants may have video access, but have been asked to turn off their camera until called upon. At that time, they may use share screen capabilities if appropriate. All chat and question and answer boxes have been disabled. The meeting is being held via video conference in compliance with the Open Meetings Act. All members of the public body and members of the public participating electronically will be considered present at the meeting and may participate as if physically present at the meeting. All of the members of the Planning Commission are participating from Salem Township. If members of the body, not applicants or staff, are participating from elsewhere, they need to say so, identifying the county, municipality, and state. There will be opportunity for the public to speak during public hearing, if any, and during public comment periods. Instructions for public comment will be provided at that time. Okay. So now, okay, approval of the agenda.
Madam Chair, before you
Yes.
approve the agenda, I noticed that under number 7, we have public hearings and there's a blank there. We should have a public hearing for the library zoning ordinance amendment. So I would suggest that you update your agenda to add that.
Oh, I see. Okay. Okay. Okay, do we have a motion for the approval of the agenda with the added correction?
Motion to approve the agenda as submitted with the amendment of the library public hearing under number 7 of the agenda for February 22nd, 2021.
I'll second.
Okay, do a roll call vote, please?
Roll call. Bart Kahn,
Yes.
Daryl Lewandowski,
Yes.
TJ McLaughlin,
Yes.
Pam Lowe,
Yes.
Bruce Reeve, yes. Robert Rizzo,
Yes.
and Daniel Bagari.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Number 5, public comment. We have more instructions or,
I can read the instructions on how people can make public comments if you would like.
yes, please.
Okay, so we will start with participants who have signed on online. You can indicate that you would like to make a comment by clicking the raise your hand button found at the bottom of your screen if you're joining by a computer, or at the top of your screen if you're on a tablet. Your microphone will be enabled one at a time until all online participants have had the opportunity to speak. Once you're unmuted by the host, the dialog box will say stay muted or unmute myself. Choose unmute myself if you wish to speak. Second, we will go to people who have called in on the phone to give them an opportunity to speak, and you can raise your hand by pressing *9 and then press *6 to unmute yourself. And again, we'll take turns till everyone's had a chance to speak once. And I'll remind you that there is also the public hearing for the agenda item.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I don't see anyone raising their hand.
I think someone wants to raise their hand because I know he has something to say. Mr. David Guidabono.
Oh, there it is. I will allow them to talk.
You just had to figure out this whole process here, I'm sure.
Fair enough.
And he's unmuted.
Hi, my name is Dave Guidabono. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. I first want to say that I want to comply with all rules of Salem Township. And I'm proposing to build a 40 by 60 barn on my property. And I've had a site survey and everything will fit. I meet all the, the requirements for setbacks, but I've been told that Salem Township has an ordinance that you can't have more than 3 buildings or 2 outbuildings in your home. And I do have a secondary garage, but I also put up a few years ago a small pump shed for my swim spa, which is only 10 by 12. And I have my pump in there and I have my chemicals and patio furniture for the winter. And I was told at the time that anything under 200 square feet was not considered, or I'd need a permit for it. And that's why I built that size. And I want to put up this barn to store my lawn tractor, my car collection, my snowplow. And I'm being told that because of the pump shed, I'd have too many buildings. And I'm just wondering if they can do something about the ordinance, if there's anything I can do. That's why I'm calling, just to see what, I have driven around a lot of my neighbors in Salem, and they have, stuff all over the front lawns, which is something I don't want. I want to store everything inside as I always have. And, I see a lot of people with barns and secondary sheds and everything else. And I just wonder if there's anything we can do about this ordinance or something I can do. That's pretty much all I have to say.
Thanks, Dave.
Where do I go from here?
Well, I think this is just public comment right now. So
Okay.
everybody just states their comments and then the planning commission can talk about them or bring things up later on at another date or at the end of the meeting or things of that nature. So we just listen to all the comments in a row here and then we move on with our meeting.
Okay.
So
So
you
what do I do?
state your
What do-
piece and then somebody
Okay.
will, Paul or will probably get back with you and talk with you about it, about what some options might be.
Okay, should I expect a call or should I call Paul or just what do I do?
I'm happy to follow up with you.
Okay, Paul. All right, well, thank you for listening again. I'm just trying to comply with everything. Do you need my number, Paul, or do you have it already?
I believe I have it.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for your time. That's it, right? I'm all set?
You're all set, Dave.
Okay, thank you very much. Take care. Bye now.
Thanks. Any other public comment?
I don't see any
I
other
don't
hands.
see any
raised.
right now. I just want to say that Dave Guidabono is my neighbor. He lives, we live on the same street. And he did come to me and ask some questions, so I sent him to Paul. So he did have concerns, and maybe that's something we can talk about later if of how to address it, help him if we can. I don't know. But anyhow, I just want to put that out there that he is my neighbor, so. So I know what his issue is. That's what I'm saying. I'm not asking for anything, honest to God. I'm just saying.
Have
just
him
know- I just know
to
it's
the
issues.
pool, that pump building that he's got, tell him to put the addition onto the pump building.
Yeah.
Build that into
Well, I'll
the,
let Paul work with that. Paul's the expert on all that stuff. Yeah. Okay. Okay, I don't see any other, so let's move on. I guess I don't have any comments. Okay, public hearing.
okay.
So we have a public hearing for the library zoning ordinance amendment. Do we have a motion to open, do we have to do a reading for this one too, Paul? The public hearing, because that's
So
before we open it?
you can open it. Those same rules apply, and I'm happy to give my report first. And I think the applicant is here if they want to do if you want to have them do their report, and then we can take comments from the public if you'd like.
Okay, I have a reading that it says I'm supposed to do for public comment. Do you want me to open it and then read it?
Sure.
Okay. So we have a motion to open the public hearing.
I make a motion to open the public hearing on the library zoning ordinance for February 22, 2021 as of 7:46 PM in the evening.
Okay, thank you, Daryl. We have a second?
I'll second
I'll
it.
second it. Thanks, TJ.
TJ,
Just pick one.
Okay.
I heard TJ first.
So we have
Okay.
TJ as second, and the vote to open the meeting,
Yes.
Bart Kahn,
Yes.
Darrell Lewandowski,
Yep.
TJ McLaughlin,
Yes.
Pam Lowe,
Yes.
Bruce Reed, yes. Robert Rizzo,
Yes.
and Dan Bagari.
yes.
Thank you.
Okay, I have a public hearing, public comment, electronic meeting script to read here. It says, at this time, we'll open the meeting up for public comment. We'll start with online participants. You can indicate that you would like to provide a comment by clicking, will raise your hand button found at the bottom of your screen if you are joining by computer, or at the top of your screen if you're joining by tablet. Your microphone will be enabled one at a time until all online participants have had the opportunity to speak. When you are unmuted by the host, you'll see a dialog box that says stay muted or unmute myself. Choose unmute myself if you wish to speak. Second, anyone who has phoned in will have the opportunity to speak. I will ask for callers to speak by raising their hand by pressing *9 and then pressing *6 to unmute. Callers must take turns until each call wishing to speak has had the opportunity to speak once. We ask that comments be limited to 3 minutes. So Paul, perhaps you should do your outline, and is that usually what we do? And then have the applicant go next, or the public?
Okay, I see the applicants here, so I'll go ahead and give you my report, and then I'll promote them to a panelist so they can give any report that they'd like to. So the township received an application from the Salem South Lyon District Library, located at 9800 Pontiac Trail, to amend the zoning ordinance to allow for drive-throughs in the public, semi-public services zoning district. The ordinance does allow, typically zoning ordinance amendments come from either direction from the board or from the planning commission based on some need that we've recognized, or a deficiency in the zoning ordinance, but the ordinance does allow for property owners to request an amendment to the text of the zoning ordinance, and that's what they have done. If you are all familiar with the setup of the library, which I'm sure you are, you'll know that there is a book drop-off lane that already exists, and they were interested in installing a window on the library itself in order to serve customers through that window. And so based on the definition of drive-through in the ordinance, that states that a drive-through is a facility or space for the purpose of serving patrons through a window or a booth while they're in their motor vehicle rather than within a structure. So we recognize that as being very distinct definition for what they're trying to do. And, it's not permitted by the zoning ordinance. I think their intent is that they want to be able to do some social distance serving of their patrons. I think it would be one thing if we were dealing with this just on a temporary basis, but once they've installed this on the building, it will be permanent. And so in order to make that legitimate, I think it must be part of the zoning ordinance in order for us to approve it. So they understood that, and they went ahead and submitted an application to change the ordinance. And so in our report, we kind of discussed some of the considerations for your thoughts. Oftentimes drive-throughs are kind of highly regulated. Usually they're associated with a restaurant or a service establishment like a dry cleaner, or oftentimes with banks, that kind of thing. So there are 3 different categories that are listed in the zoning ordinance for drive-throughs. And as you are all familiar, there's a table of uses, table 20.02, I believe, in the zoning ordinance, that indicates whether or not a particular use is permitted with as a conditional use or not permitted at all. So we placed that table in your packet with the proposed change to show that this would be a permitted use as opposed to a conditional use. So they would not have to go through that additional conditional use process, just go through the site plan process. Our thought is that this is a very narrow change because in the public, semi-public district, if we allow for drive-throughs for government offices or libraries, those would be the only two uses within the public, semi-public district where that would be permissible. And so if Salem ever does get another library, then this would be allowed there as well in that public, semi-public district. There are very, very few spaces that are already zoned that in the township, and there are really no other places that are planned for that. So as we indicate in our report, oftentimes there's concern about traffic stacking, there's concern about headlights, there's concern about maybe noise from an order box or something like that. But we do have additional provisions in the ordinance, specific standards that any site plan would have to meet if they were installing a drive-through. So those kind of additional kind of considerations already exist. So that's kind of the crux of our report. We think that this is a very narrow change. If you see fit to recommend approval to the board, we don't see this as setting a precedence in a bad way or creating any kind of nuisance for the general public in the township. And so your choices then would be to either, the township board has the ultimate authority to make an amendment to the zoning ordinance. So you could make a recommendation to them to approve, you could make a recommendation to them to deny, or you could make a recommendation for approval with any changes that you see fit, in addition to what the applicant has proposed. So I'm happy to answer any questions now or after, but if you'd like, I can promote the applicant at this time.
Anybody just have any general questions before we get to the applicant?
What side of the building of the library is that window going on? Is that the north end of the library?
I believe it's the west side.
Oh, the west side.
There's a
Facing
little,
Pontiac Trail.
yeah, there's a little loop drive where there's already a
yes.
book drop off.
Okay. It is far enough off the road too, and far as impeding any traffic or anything, I don't think that would be a congested area there.
Yeah, I mean, this still is required to go through. This is just the ordinance amendment. They'd still have to update their site plan. But
Okay.
as far as I can tell, their site plan, as they proposed it, would meet the requirements in the supplemental regulation portion of the ordinance.
So Paul, you don't see any problem with it as,
No,
as,
sir.
as proposed?
No, like I said, I think it's a very narrow change. It's not going to create, we don't see any ill side effects that would be created by doing this.
Okay, thank you.
They already have a book drop box. I've used it 100 times. It's great for when, my kids were little and in the car. I didn't have to drag them all out through the rain to return books. It was just a quick drive through at a drop box. So they're just planning on keeping it right there. And, it started out, I think with, from what I understand, because of the quarantine, a lot of libraries were closed. But then they thought, well, people could place orders, or even like for the elderly, who can't get out of their car, or it's tough for them, or if it's raining in the snow, it would be a nice convenience for them. They're so far off the road. I can't see any traffic stacking. There are no speakers or anything to do. It's just kind of like drive up and get your stuff and go, or
Okay, just
drop and go. It's, it made sense to me.
for clarification here, are we talking about changing the ordinance specifically right now? Or are we talking about changing the ordinance and advancing the library's permission to make this change?
We're only talking about the ordinance amendment at this point.
Okay, so we don't necessarily need to be talking about the library or how close it is to the road or what their current configuration is or what wall or anything like that. We're talking about, in general, anybody in PSP wants to put in a drive-through, this is what we're talking about.
Correct. And and Bart, you're exactly right. Those are the considerations that you should be making at this time.
Okay, library comes secondary after this.
They are the applicants.
Yeah, they're the applicants, but their specific structure comes after we make any action here.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
The reason I said those things, because those are some of the concerns of why we did not, why it was not allowed, why drive-throughs were not allowed. So if you're talking about changing the ordinance or making an amendment to the ordinance because drive-throughs are not allowed in this specific, for these specific types of uses, PSP.
Paul, I don't know if you cut
Okay.
out or not. What types of businesses are allowed in PSP?
So in PSP, you can have public buildings, you can have churches, you can have, I think, hospitals. I can pull up the specific list real quick. But if you look at the proposed change, the specific language, does not appear to be in the packet, which unless it's down.
I have for the PSP was churches, schools, civics, clubs, right? Is that right, Paul?
Yes, that's right. Let me just.
So we
open that.
have government office. Oh, that, never mind, don't even go there.
So in the proposed change, though, the only uses that would be permitted to have them would be government offices and libraries,
Not churches?
not churches.
Could you give me an example of a government office that would have a drive-through?
The township office, for example, it could have a drive-through where maybe you could pay your water bill or something like that.
Okay, and the township office right now is in a PSP?
Township office right now is in a Hamlet Center district.
Okay,
How about a post office, Paul?
Post office,
Seems like that would fit the parameters.
yeah, okay. That's probably a good example.
let's see.
But if, I guess my question kind of comes down to, why are we adding government office on top of library?
So the three categories of drive-through in the zoning ordinance are drive-in, drive-through facilities for financial institutions and government offices, drive-in or drive-through facilities for restaurants and food service establishments, drive-in or drive-through facilities for pharmacies, drugstores, and other retail services. So for that first category that currently says drive-in or drive-through facilities for financial institutions and government offices, we're also adding library. And those then are a conditional use in the office commercial district, a conditional use in the general commercial use district, a permitted use in the highway commercial district, and then we would also add it as a permitted use in the PSP district. But because financial institutions are not permitted in the PSP district, the only two uses that would then be allowed to have that would be the library and the government office.
Okay, thank you. That's very clear.
Yep, and I apologize. I thought I had included the table with the change as part of my report, but I did not. So I'm going to try to pull that up and share it on my screen here in a moment.
You did explain it pretty good, though, I thought, on page 2, where you said it will only allow for drive-throughs for library and governmental offices because financial institutions are not an otherwise permitted use in the PSP district. So, you know, it was pretty clear in the text.
Okay. But I will show you exactly what we're talking about here, just so you can see it. If I can make technology work for me, just bear with me for a minute. Send it. Okay. Sharing the screen. Ta-da. Okay, there we go. So this is the third or fourth page down in that land use table. And if you can see right here where I'm pointing with my cursor, you can see the red highlighted libraries, and then the P would be within the PSP district. And so those are the very simple change that we're talking about here.
Okay.
And then I've promoted Kathy, and I assume, I'm making the assumption that that is Kathy from the library. Is that you?
Yes.
So if you have anything you'd like to say, or if there's anybody else from your team who wanted to do a presentation, I can promote them.
Our board president, Linda Hamilton, is here to represent
Okay,
us.
I will promote her then. Linda, if you'd like to speak, you can hit your mute button. There you go.
The only thing I have to add, Paul, to what you've said is, yes, we started this as was referenced under COVID, but it is not just COVID related at this time. It is a service we hope to offer as we move forward. Somebody that can't get into the library, whether it's due to age or medical condition, or just for convenience sake, we'd like to have that ability to allow them to come up to the library, get their materials. Currently, it requires staff to exit the facility and bring it to their car. We already have the lane. We already allow you to put books and materials back into the building. All we want to be able to do now is hand those materials out to the general public. Thank you.
Makes sense.
So, Madam Chair, we're still in the middle of the public hearing. I don't know if any of the other members in the audience wanted to speak. I see Steve. I know that he's their architect. So there's really only one other person. And if not, then you can close the public hearing and start your discussion.
Give them just a minute. Okay. No other comments for the public hearing? Okay. Do we have a motion to close the public hearing?
Motion to close the public hearing at 8:05 PM.
Okay. We have a second.
Second.
Daryl, second.
And the vote.
Okay.
Orkan,
Yes.
thank you. Daryl Lewandowski,
Yes.
thank you. TJ McLaughlin,
Yes.
Pamela Lowe,
Yes.
Bruce Reed, yes. Robert Rizzo,
Yes.
and Daniel Bagari.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. I just want to acknowledge that I received 3 emails in support of the library and the text amendments from Mr. Scott Jurgen, who's from South Lyon, and Ms. Deborah, it's M-R-A-Z. I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce her last name. And she actually, and all of them are supporting about the curbside, the service, the elderly, the medically impaired, being able to service these individuals that otherwise have challenges getting in and out of the library. It would provide them increased opportunity. Miss Deborah, she actually put in that it could be scheduled. People can schedule their pickup through the window, which would, be a cool idea. And then Ms. Janet Bernardino, she also was in support. So I did receive 3 emails, all in support of the library. So do we have some discussion?
I would like to just submit that I agree with Pam about the location of the drive-through is ideal. It actually negates any of the regular concerns over a drive-through window.
TJ, anything?
I mean,
Bruce?
I agree.
All in support, just a quick question, Paul, just your assurance that there's no other potential loopholes in this route, the path that we're taking is the best path for what we're trying to accomplish.
I believe so.
Okay, thank you.
I'm in favor of it. I think it's a plus for the library to have that, to serve the public.
And it doesn't change traffic patterns at all. It's already set.
No.
There's already a lane there for, drop off. So it's kind of, they already have a perfect setup for it. There's literally going to be a change in the wall, the outer wall. So.
Paul, I know you said that this is a permitted use, but wasn't there something about it that, that any drive-throughs, not that it was conditional, but it did have to be approved by the board or the planning commission in order for them to implement one? Wasn't there something about that?
It's still a site plan amendment, so they'll have to update their site
Okay.
plan, and that has to get approved by the planning commission. But in this case, the proposed change is not to make it a conditional use, as it is for
Okay.
restaurant drive-throughs in the general commercial district. So you wouldn't have the ability to place additional conditions. You wouldn't have to hold a public hearing. But there are supplemental regulations that they do have to meet. But like I said, from my look at the plan, it appears that they meet all those supplemental regulations. The only kind of sticky one is there's a requirement to have a bypass lane, but because the way they have this set up, the chute, if you will, is really only as long as like 1 or 2 cars, and so anybody else can bypass that if they don't want to go through there. So I think that they will meet all of those supplemental regulations, and any other use that comes along, if it's another library, or if, say, the Salem Township government has an office in a PCP district and wants to set up a drive-through, they would have to meet those regulations as well through the site plan process.
And the only reason I brought that up was to try, this seems like, it seems so easy to make this decision for me anyhow, that we're big library supporters and users. As I was looking for the loophole, like Bruce was, what am I missing? So I like this is able to, yeah.
Okay. But
Okay.
what we're voting on here, the public hearing, is to change the zoning ordinance. The library is bringing forth the proposal, but outside of that, what we're voting on here is to change the ordinance, allowing this library or any of the other 50 libraries that will be built in Salem Township, right?
All 50 of them.
And then after this, are we going to continue to discuss the library's request to have, advanced permission to go ahead and start doing this, understanding that the zoning ordinance will be changed? That was, it was a 2-part request they had, right?
They did not submit an application for the site plan at this point, so I think they were waiting to see if this would go through, is my understanding.
Okay, hang on, let me.
Okay, Paul.
Okay, the second paragraph or the third paragraph in the letter says, additionally, the library is requesting that the library given conditional approval while the ordinance text is being amended of a building permit to allow construction activities to begin as soon as possible. Are we discussing that tonight?
I understand that, Bart, but they did not end up submitting a site plan application to go along with that. So
okay, all right, thank you.
Paul, is our role here basically to say that we, as a planning commission, approve the proposed amendment as presented, and that we're just recommending this to the board? Is that right? If we're recommending it, if we approve this?
You're recommending it to the board. You're not approving it. You're making a recommendation to approve.
So the motion to recommend approve of the proposed amendment as presented would be appropriate, would it not?
If that's the direction that the planning commission wants to go, yes.
But we would have to vote on that. We'd make that motion to recommend approval of the proposed amendment as presented. And then there would have to be a second, and then the planning commission would have to vote on it. And
Correct.
if we voted in the affirmative, then we would have, the site plan would have to be submitted, and then that would have to go also to the board.
No,
along
that would
with-
just go to the planning commission.
Okay, to the planning commission. Okay, so the board probably would hold off approval till we made the recommendation on the site plan. Is that correct?
No,
This has to come first.
this
Just
is
the
this is
amendment.
just about the zoning ordinance text amendment. The board has authority to make approval of zoning ordinance changes.
Oh, okay.
So we still have to get approval by the board on the zoning, on the ordinance amendment.
Right. I think that's what I was trying to say.
Yeah, once the board takes action, assuming if you guys make a recommendation of approval and the board takes that recommendation and goes ahead and makes that amendment, it has to be published in the newspaper for 7 days after their action, and then the ordinance is officially changed.
Okay.
Well, I'd like to
And
make the
what-
motion to approve of the proposed amendment as presented.
Is that the motion?
That's a motion.
I'll second it. I thought there'd be more to that.
No further discussion on anything?
Sure. It's just a motion and a second. You can still discuss the motion.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say, I agree with the motion, what we're doing here. We're just, it really is kind of like we're looking back at the ordinance and, for the lack of a better way, it's an oversight. If we go back to this PSP area and say, okay, libraries are putting these, maybe somewhere someone should have caught, libraries are going to have a drive-through for a book drop off or to be able to talk to a person and take a book. We should allow it there. This is kind of just going back as I see it and kind of just making an improvement on the way it really should be. So I do think this is straightforward and pretty reasonable. Once it's changed, then the library will be requesting to put in this window, show a site plan, and they will be in compliance with the existing ordinance at that point. So it makes sense. It's laid out right. So.
I agree. And the reason I was asking the questions about how this would go is because I believe that the reason that drive-throughs were not permitted in the PSP district is because some of these buildings and organizations were in neighborhoods. And so it only made sense not to have drive-throughs in neighborhoods from what we saw. But now when we look and see how things actually are, that I think this, as Bart said, would be a good idea. It would be a good improvement. But I wanted to make sure that we looked at the impact of changing this text amendment would provide. That's why I was asking the questions of a little more detailed about the library, and not asking questions, but explaining it, because we wanted to see the impact to ensure that what we're doing was going in the right direction. If that makes sense. Okay, so
All
Any other
information
discussion?
is good information, Pam.
yes, it is. Okay, so we had Dan create the motion. And
Darrell
did
seconded.
Daryl second it? Okay,
Ready for the vote?
I think we're ready for a vote.
Okay, Bart Con,
Yes.
Darrell Lewandowski,
Yes.
DJ McLaughlin,
Yes,
Pamela Lowe,
Yes,
Bruce Reed, yes. Robert Rizzo,
Yes.
and Daniel Vaderi.
Yes.
Thank you.
okay. All righty. Moving on. So Paul, we did the public hearing. That was considered the new business item, correct? And so now we're moving on to the second new business item, the lighting ordinance.
That's correct.
You're muted. Okay, thanks.
Yes, that's correct.
There
Sorry.
you go. Okay. Not that I didn't believe you, Dan. Okay, Paul, if you would like to do a brief overview of the lighting ordinance, please.
Yes, let's see. Okay, so this was one of the items that was included in your annual list of priorities. And Pam and I talked about this one, thought this might be kind of a low-hanging fruit, something we could discuss quickly and potentially make some updates to. The lighting ordinances, or the lighting section in the ordinance is pretty short. As I indicate in my cover memo with this, kind of the main intent here is to protect neighbors from glare and light trespass. And so that's what the provisions of the ordinance are about. However, we have noticed that because of some of the exemptions, it's not actually doing its job. So I think one of the things that probably one of the innovations that has happened since this lighting ordinance was adopted is that we have some newer technologies, some higher, more available technology for brighter lights on kind of a residential scale. And so what we've seen is that there have been more incidents of light trespass and glare. And so my intent this evening is just to introduce this topic to you and kind of get your feedback and sentiment on how we should move forward. You know, there are a variety of levels of lighting ordinances, you know, from very, very detailed that deal with the maximum and minimum foot candles that are either required or allowed directly under a light and within sidewalks and, you know, at entrances to buildings. Obviously, the building code has some requirements about safety, but some of these go into much more detail. Often, a really simple requirement is that light levels drop down to zero when you get to a property line. I think to some extent, my recommendation with the introduction of utilities in the USD, it may be appropriate to beef up some of this for at least your commercial districts, because you will see more commercial development in that area. But specifically looking at the ordinance that we do have in place and the exemptions that we have exemptions for lighting for farms, which is typical, greenhouses, riding stables, single and two-family dwellings. If their lights do not exceed 30 feet, they're exempt from the requirements of this ordinance. But like I said, this is where we're starting to see folks being able to buy some like LED style lights that do tend to be very bright and shine for a long distance. And so we may want to take a look at those exemptions and see how we could potentially tweak this. Obviously, we don't want to infringe on people's rights, but we also want to make sure that we're not allowing for a situation that's diminishing their neighbors' ability to enjoy their own properties. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. I'm happy to answer questions, but mostly I'm just looking for your feedback and trying to get some direction from you on this.
So is this coming up for discussion because there's been some complaints about lights that currently meet this ordinance?
In particular, we have had some issues with glare from LED lights that do meet the exemption, but because they meet that exemption, we don't have any ability to even ask folks to make them downward directed or anything like that.
Well,
So typically, I guess my thought is with the residential exemption, usually you would end up, historically you might have a, like the jelly jar style light fixture on the front of your house with an incandescent bulb in it that technically is not shielded or down directed, but on a residential scale, it's exempted and probably doesn't cause much harm. But if you have a light that's less than 30 feet, if it's a LED light in a residential application, it can shine for a mile unobstructed.
30 feet seems really high for an exemption. For a whole categories to be exempt, and it can be 29 feet high.
Look how the barns are though, on the farms.
Yeah, but is this saying that they don't even need to be down directed? Because I
Correct.
mean, I have a barn, it's got 6 lights all around it. They're pretty high. They're all down directed. So there's nothing shining outward. But so according to this, it can shine anywhere if it's 29 feet up in the air. Is that
If it's
part of your whole home or
Yep.
or you say you have a farm,
correct.
then it can just be 29 feet blasting everywhere. It seems like too big of an exemption to even like it kind of negates having an ordinance for the most part, except for business. I mean, because what is our township? Our township's almost all private residents. There's not a lot of businesses.
Well, if you had a home though on some acreage, you could have when you say 30 feet, so you could have lighting up on a pole, shining over, your driveway or yard or whatever, right?
Yeah, it does. I don't believe it means mounted on the dwelling itself.
Correct. It
Yeah.
could be, but it also could be, it might be on a pole, right?
Correct.
So what TJ is trying to say, you would like to put some more stipulations in that under A number 1, where the exemption paragraph.
I think it's just a huge exemption. I can see where it would cause problems. I mean, if my neighbor had a 29-foot pole in the middle of their yard with a runway strip light, just like that store that there's been a lot of complaints about over the years, the little store at Goffredson. I mean, the lights make it hard at nighttime to drive because they're so bright. And that's not 30 feet in the air, but I mean, it could just make for a lot of problems for neighbors.
I guess as long as, if we're looking at this, as long as the light does not go over the property line. Is that correct, Paul? The glare does not cross the property lines.
Yeah, so there's a difference between like foot candles and glare. So foot candles is a measurement of the brightness on the ground. And so typically you would have something in an ordinance that says that the foot candles need to diminish to 0 by the time you get to a property line, but you still may be able to see glare from a bulb. So glare is different. Glare is usually dealt with by the fixture type, so that it's completely, the bulb is completely recessed and downward facing.
Right, okay.
Yeah, the lampshade itself.
Like that's got shields on it.
For what it's worth, go back to my youth when I used to travel out to California a lot. The whole city of San Jose is restricted to the color, the actual frequency of light that is allowed to be used for their street lights, for store lights, and everything like that. And that is to reduce glare, so that the what is it, Mount Uminum, there's an observation tower up there, you know, look up at the stars, does not have glare coming up, so it allows them to look out and have good quality sight. So as we look at this, maybe we should be considering the light frequency itself, and not allowing these ice blue, you know, these burning bright colors, and get to something that's more, you know, on the yellow side. And you'll notice that in car headlights and things like that, and these LEDs that are being purchased, you can, you know, specify the light frequency you want, usually running from somewhere around, I think it's like 8,000 hertz down to, I think like 3,000 is like a calm, cool, you know, a calm yellow, kind of more like a flame color, you know, yellow flame color. And that certainly, I believe, in my opinion, reduces how objectionable a light is. You know, you've gone past the house that has more of like the orange light bulbs around their garage, and they can have a whole bunch of them and everything can be lit up, but boy, it just doesn't bore a hole through your head. It's when you get these ice blue ones that seem in there. And maybe, if anything, we should be considering the color a little more so than, I'll say, the intensity.
I think that's a good point, Bart. And like I said, we have examples of a whole variety of different regulations, and we can, you know, there's everything from intensity to color. And so depending on the direction you want to go, as I said before, some of these things that are more stringent may be more appropriate for commercial applications. Whereas I think that if our goal is to get rid of glare and maybe make the exemptions a little less open-ended, at a minimum, we could work on the glare situation for single family homes. But I think, to your point, you know, we could delve into a lot of detail when it comes to commercial site plan review.
I think the application is important too. I mean, obviously that store on North Territorial, that is tough. It makes driving difficult.
Let me ask this question. Is that store in compliance?
But they need bright.
I'm sorry, Pam.
That they need bright light. I mean, they've got security and all those kinds of issues, and so does the storage area, where it's going to be different for residential. So what we come up with, Paul, you know, need to apply it to the appropriate places, so we're not in, you know, a blanket, you know, for the lighting doesn't work. Go ahead, Bart. What was your question?
Is that store right now in compliance?
I don't believe so. Well, they were not at one point when they first installed those lights, and I believe they have since made those lights downward directed, but they might have pushed them up again. If I'm hearing that they're actually causing problems, then that maybe they're out of compliance.
Well, I know the one on the south side that's goes out into Old North Territorial. Somebody had gone over there. They've knocked that light right off the building. So there's no more light on the south side pointing towards Old North Territorial.
Okay.
So somebody some homeowner or some resident or somebody took, I guess, matters into their own hands. So that's what happened over there to the south roof mounted LED light.
I just didn't know if it's because my eyes are old and by the time you put glasses and God forbid if it's raining, then I'm really in trouble. I'm not a good judge.
Yeah, I talked to the owner there, and somebody knocked the south light right out. So
Wow. Huh.
They complained enough, huh?
yeah, I guess somebody they figure somebody backed up with their pickup truck and took care of that light. So
Mm-hmm.
don't have to worry about the south side now.
I thought they'd have cameras all over that place.
Yeah.
Okay. Paul, do the things we talk about or brought to your attention, does it give you enough, especially in regards to the complaints and the problems that you've been receiving in the township?
I think so. One other question that I would. No, I think that this is perfect direction. That's exactly what I was looking for. So we can put together some draft changes and bring those back to you for your reaction to those specifics. One other question I would ask you though is this ordinance does suggest that the township doesn't want to see street lighting in neighborhoods. And while that may be appropriate for most of the rural areas of the township, I wonder again with some of the neighborhoods that may be coming online in the USD, if you would rather see the requirement to have street lighting, pedestrian scale, obviously, they would be low kind of neighborhood style lights, but like Salem Springs, for example.
Well, will that be up to the HOAs?
It would be up to you as the planning commission when you review a site plan to start out with.
Yeah. We talked about that a lot.
Oh, I have a comment on that. I live close to the manufactured home park, and I do know that it's disappointing to look in that direction in the night sky, especially in the summer. You like to look at the stars and you can't see anything but the orange glow. The whole park is aglow because their lights are not, they don't have any down shields on them whatsoever. They are strictly, completely up as well as around. So I don't particularly care for that. So with the proper lighting for safety in the USD possibly, but definitely want to try and stop the orange glow. I mean, it literally looks like, the nuclear plant glow when I look in that direction. And because of the sheer quantity of lights they have in that area. And then the other thing is, again, just keep in mind in our township, even though we have mostly larger lots or larger parcels, it still comes into play sometimes where, like my neighbor, we're both on 2 acres, but you think we could get more than 70 feet between the two houses, and apparently not. But that was poor design, but that's okay. That's his choice. So we need to actually consider the fact that if and this isn't a case, but if he happens to have one of those nice motion lamps that with the high bright LEDs that just literally point straight out, could very easily be distracting to, because it would be pointing directly into a bedroom window and very distracting towards night sleep and things of that nature. So sometimes these bright security lights, motion or otherwise, night, dusk to dawn, whatever, they're not necessarily pointing down, they're pointing out to light up the large landscape, but at the same time, as security lights are supposed to, but at the same time, it's could be very bothersome to a neighbor that could be close by. Like I said, I don't have that condition, but I can picture that condition happening. Sometimes you just can't put houses that far apart because of natural features. Houses get to go only where they fit. So, and it may be close to another resident.
Okay.
And some of you guys may remember with Showstack, they did not want to put any street lighting, and there was quite a bit of discussion around that. And I think we were just trying to balance safety with, minimal light pollution, I guess is kind of what they were calling it. So,
So in my
the question was, do we need to light every single inch of the street, or did we need to put them on just on corners or intersection type things? I know there was big discussion around that with Showstack. Some of y'all may remember that.
Yes.
In my experience with neighborhoods of that nature, that kind of density of a neighborhood, oftentimes they will go in without the streetlights, and then, years later they come back and they say, well, it's just not bright enough. You can't see. It's a safety issue. It's bad for people walking in the neighborhood. It's bad for people driving in the neighborhood, and so then they end up having to come back and retrofit it. I believe that Showstack's solution to that concern was that they would light up the neighborhood by having lights on the houses. And so in order to do it from a house light to light the street, as opposed to having a street lamp where you could require a fixture that's shielded and down directed, so you're not, ruining the night sky, you have to have more of an exposed wall light that throws light farther out. And so you really can't do both. So my suggestion would be, if you're thinking that there's a situation where neighborhoods like this should have pedestrian scale streetlights, that we can very specifically make the requirements for what those could and should be, ensure that the style of light is something that is down directed. It's not going to throw glare. It's not going to light the night sky, and then not allow for those on the houses to, throw that additional light pollution out there. It's a fine balance.
Myself,
Yeah.
with the house lamp is useless because it doesn't shine out, where a yard lamp. And then I can't see why, they don't think the idea of a lamppost at the intersections is a safety item. So people driving and or walking, people driving will be able to see them much better, because I don't understand why, they would want to come back a year later and say, well, we'll put a few lights in to brighten it up. It should be done at the beginning.
Well, Paul, with that Showstack development, they got to come, they still have to come in with their site plan. I mean, on the houses and all the specifics, and none of that's even been covered yet, right? So
The final site plan still needs to be approved. I believe the direction on the lighting has already been discussed.
And so
I think the technology has changed since we discussed it last.
That may be true, but I think that there was already an agreement that they could use the photo cells on the houses to provide that safety lighting for the streets, as opposed to doing street lights. I think we got them to maybe do them at intersections, but not throughout.
and the
Also
light
have intersections.
for the intersection is coming from the home that's on the corner.
No, the ones at the intersection, I believe we got them to put poles in, like
Oh.
street lights, but as opposed to having them every 20 feet or something like that. The balance of the light for the street lights would be provided by the homes.
Okay.
But
All right.
in the future, if we have something specifically written into the ordinance, then it's not a negotiation.
Are we talking about what would be permitted or what would be required?
Both. I mean, that's what you have the opportunity to decide at this point.
Okay, I would see if somebody wanted to come in and develop a neighborhood and they wanted it to be a very, calm and solemn neighborhood light-wise, then they could, by their own discretion, say, this is the lighting we propose. If people don't want to live in that neighborhood because of that, they don't buy. But I'd be more leery if we're requiring certain lighting in a type of neighborhood.
Well, right now there's a prohibition on lighting in subdivisions and site condominiums.
Yeah. Okay.
In our township.
Yep, section 7 of the ordinance in your packet.
Is that, how does that fare in other communities that have those type of developments? Don't they normally have street lighting?
Requirements typically, yeah.
Yeah. So I agree with Daryl. I don't see how you're gonna light the streets from the house with the normal lights they were gonna put in anyway on the garages to light on each side of the garage. They are giving nothing show stick on that deal.
That's a done deal though already, isn't it? Didn't you say that?
If it's a done deal, it's okay by me, and we don't need to talk about it then.
It's a little anecdotal, but I just, I know there was a discussion at the roundabout at 7 Mile and Pontiac Trail, adding the light there. The neighbors didn't want it. And when somebody took out one of the poles and the lighting was no longer there for a short period, a couple months, I never missed it because the light from the store there was enough to light that whole corner up. In a rural community, it doesn't take a lot of light to light up an area. And their lights aren't terribly bright, but they're still bright enough to have lit up that whole corner, even without those street lights on.
Yeah.
And if I was living by there, it would be annoying. If I was actually a resident in that area, their lights themselves might be annoying because they weren't down, obviously, whereas the street lights are pointing down. Those had to be shined outward to get that kind of lighting in the intersection.
Hey, Bruce, question, the lights that are in the mobile home park, do we know whether those lights are within compliance of the zoning ordinance?
Great question. I haven't looked. They do not have a downward pointing shade on them. They're almost literally pointing up, and they have a full glass globe on them, so they broadcast light basically almost a perfect sphere.
And is
LED
residential
lighting
with
is
the-
changing everything. The orange glow is normally incandescent lights, which aren't as bright or as powerful. And for the person that has to pay the light bill, the LED lights are pretty cheap compared to incandescent lights. So if you've got a business owner and that, I would think they would be concerned about the cost of the lighting also. So LED light has changed the whole technology.
I guess I'm not understanding that.
It's, in other words, if you own a business and you have to have a lot of lighting, and they say LED lights are too bright, you'll have to go with the old-fashioned incandescent lights because they don't throw off as much light or that. They might not like that idea so much because it's going to cost them a lot more to light the place
Yeah,
with incandescent than it is LED. And they got to replace the
same amount of
incandescents
candle power.
Well,
You
you
can
got to replace the incandescents maybe 10 to 1 or more times. For every LED light, you got to replace those incandescents at least about 10 times. That's a difference in technology. LED lights last forever.
Right, and they're certainly more efficient, but
Yes.
but just because it's LED doesn't mean it necessarily has to put out more light.
Now, I didn't say that the amount of light, the glare was the issue with, we talked about orange lights and white lights, and that white lights throw off a lot of glare. I think
Right.
that was part of the discussion tonight.
Right, yeah, and I guess maybe I didn't make myself clear. LED lights can have different colors. They are not always bright white or ice blue or anything like that. You can literally get orangish tint and yellowish tint. It's the frequency at which the diode activates. So you can get an orange glow LED. You can get
we
a
gotta be
yellowish
little
glow
bit
LED.
practical here for the township, though. Are you going to go up to a private homeowner and go into all the technology of the different kinds of light that you want them to put on their place? You know, I mean, are we gonna get that finite in our ordinances that we're gonna define exactly what kind of technology? they
No,
use?
I don't think we, my,
No.
I think what Bart was just saying, that there are a lot of options, there are a lot of options out there, and was pointing them all out just to like brainstorm here for Paul, so he can come up next month and create something wonderful for us.
But we have to know, we have to have something definite. You know, so
Yep,
it's
well-
just discussion right now. It's not a recommendation. it's
Yep,
just-
exactly.
Just a discussion. We have to have some idea of what's reasonable.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else?
Yeah, Paul, in this note that we got, it said that it's come to our attention that some of the exemptions are defeating the intent of the ordinance. Are there specific ones that we haven't heard about that that you're talking about here?
No, not in particular. I just, what we talked about at the top of this discussion with regard to that exemption number 1 and the 30 feet in height, and
Okay,
really doesn't take care of that glare issue.
and I was gonna ask just to see if I understood or not, that if someone has a 30-foot light and it's shining onto their neighbor's house, that's not a problem currently, because wouldn't that be exempt? Or are they not exempt from the responsibility of this glare of the light?
It
You
would
know.
appear that they are exempt from the requirements to
Okay.
curb the glare. Yeah.
Okay,
Paul, on that same vein, number 2, the holiday decoration displays. It doesn't have any exceptions or anything on there, and just in case somebody wanted to go like way over the top on some bright, lighting or whatever, bright light, not necessarily the lighting itself, but some sort of a floodlight or whatever. Would it be prudent to maybe put a little bit of caveat in there? It's that one guy out of a million, but we're liable to have one.
I will look to see what kind of examples there might be to deal with that. That might be tough to deal with for the 1%
And
chance, but I'll see if there's some kind of best practice language that we could use.
it's not that I'm looking for an exemption. Do we have a way to actually ask somebody to tone it down if there is that one person?
That's I understand what you're saying. I'll that might be tough to do, either, as far as holiday lights are either exempt or not exempt. But like I said, I'll look and see if there are some examples that I can find where we can deal with that 1% chance that somebody's going to take it way too far.
If I had to err, I would err on the side of leaving it the way it is, because again, I don't want to be too restrictive either, but by the same token, again, if you wanted to actually ask somebody to do something, do you have the right to do that? If
Yeah.
it's really potentially hazardous or whatever, or dangerous because it's pointing into traffic or whatever, and it was heavily in the street or something.
Paul, this came up for an agenda item because it was kind of on our list and we saw it as a shorter one that we could just touch tonight.
Yes, sir.
Okay. There haven't been recent complaints or any sort of township activity with neighbors or somebody objecting? There hasn't been anything like that come up recently?
There have been a couple issues.
yeah.
Okay, so is that a partial reason why this came up?
It's what brought it to our attention initially, along with the gas station that was mentioned earlier. And, again, as I mentioned before,
Okay, well,
the introduction of the USD district with new commercial coming online seemed
Okay,
like
well,
it was appropriate time to tackle this.
okay. The gas station or the convenience store, I asked, is it within compliance? And we said, we don't know.
I don't think, no, it was not within compliance. I said, I don't know where it is right now.
Oh, okay, because they made a change or something?
Correct.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I haven't been by there in a while, so okay. All right, I got you.
Okay.
Well, all I can say is
Um,
I encourage, I say this type of thing a lot, it seems, is begin with the end in mind. And if what you don't want is light of a certain type or of a certain objectionability, what's the word of a light of an objectionable nature spilling over into a neighbor's property, then decide how you measure that and then assign a value in a unit to that measurement and make it comply. Because I look at the 30 feet and say, okay, if you're smack dab in the middle of, 160 acres, who cares if it's 30 feet or 300 feet? What you care about is if the
Exactly.
neighbor, if it's beaming in their eyes. So if it's shielded and not beaming in their eyes, it doesn't matter how high it is. So I look at the 30 feet thing as that's irrelevant, so
Well, but it's
it, it,
only,
it, it can certainly be a problem. No doubt. It can certainly be a problem, but make it fix the problem. Don't necessarily, cut out that 1% that, geez, I really wish I could put a light up on top of my windmill and light up this field when I need to be out there, and it wouldn't bother any neighbor because I'm so far away, but yet they're not allowed because it's over 30 feet tall. That's swinging the pendulum the other way. So if the goal, like, we don't see, an antique car collection in a neighbor's yard, put up a fence, make it something measurable. So, and then you can work with or against or show how it's in or out of compliance.
And Bart, I agree, and that's why I suggested that we consider the application of where these lights are and how they impact the area.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
TJ, did you want to finish?
just by exempting 98% of the structures in our township from any kind of oversight can have a potential problem. And, just like talking about the color of lights and stuff. I mean, we can talk about it, all we want, but right now, with the exemptions that we have, the only thing we're talking about are a few commercial structures in our township.
Oh, I agree with you, TJ.
Right?
I think the exemptions do seem a little bit much.
Why? Yeah.
Yeah, I do agree that it's just when if we start looking at them, let's not swing it too far the other way. Yeah, no, that's.
I think we're all pretty good at that, though.
Yeah.
I think we're pretty good at keeping it at a minimum. We're trying not to go over the top, and if we start to sway that way, there's somebody, whether on our panel or in the audience, that will say, hey, what about this? And so team effort. We'll be good. Okay. Are we good on the lighting? Paul, are you good?
Yes, thank you. I appreciate the direction and the commentary.
Okay. Old business items, none. Reports of commissioners and correspondence, Board of Trustee.
Nothing that the planning commission needs to know about, just some reappointments and poverty hardship guidelines that we have to sign every year. It's the last meeting.
ZBA,
Nothing new,
Okay.
nothing to add.
land preservation,
Nothing new since last meeting.
planning consultant review, anything?
We had one new home and a handful of electrical, plumbing, and mechanical permits. Nothing too exciting. Should have D and S landscaping on the agenda for you next month.
All right. Approval of the minutes for January 25th.
Make a motion to approve the minutes for January 25th, the virtual meeting held by Zoom as submitted.
We have a second.
I'll second it.
Okay, thank you, Dan.
Thanks, Dan.
And for the vote. Bart Kahn,
Yes.
Darrell Lewandowski,
Yes.
TJ McLaughlin,
Yes,
Tamara Lowe,
Yes.
Bruce Reed, yes. Robert Rizzo,
Yes.
and Dan Bagari.
Yes.
Thank you.
I guess we still have to get to public comment, but I see reports of commissioners and correspondence. I already did mention that I had those 3 emails of correspondence back in the public hearing, so. And I think we have some public comment, Linda. So Paul, could you?
Am I good to go, Pam?
Go ahead, Linda.
First, I'd like to thank the PC for approving the text amendment tonight, but I'm very perplexed. Back in January, Pam and I exchanged emails about this library issue because we wanted to do it right. But time is of an essence because we have to get into the construction firm's summer schedule. And so back on January 18th, I said, and this is from an email, I'd be happy to provide it to all of you. Pam, thank you so much for looking into this matter. The library will follow the procedure you outlined, requesting a zoning text revision and conditional use. So we followed we were told, and I have an email forwarded to me that came from Paul. And I followed that through. Then in February, on the 15th, where I again touched base with Pam and just wanted to make sure that we had submitted everything that we needed to do this in one meeting. I heard Paul say words to the effect that our site plan is compliant with the ordinance. We already have the drive-through lane, but now we're deficient because we don't have a site plan application. Yet I sent emails, several emails, and I read 2 of them to you to make sure that we weren't deficient. We have to date, the library has paid $3,000 to Salem Township of your money, because you're all taxpayers, to the library to get this small text amendment made. $3,000. That's money that could buy books. It's money that could do programming, but we paid it to the library or to the township because we were told that's what we had to do. Now tonight, for the first time, when I've been working on this with the township since January, I'm told, oh no, there's another application, and at what cost and how much more of your taxpayer dollars do you want spent for this? And I would like an answer tonight, because time is of an essence. This is not just COVID related. This is to provide a better service to you as patrons of the library, as some of you referenced. And again, I simply don't understand why, when I have in writing asked several times what we needed to do this, and then again tonight, Paul says something that apparently couldn't have been shared back in January or even February 15th, the last date that I contacted Ms. Merlo.
Madam Chair, if you'd like me to speak to that, I
I would, please.
Yeah, I mean, I was involved in, I saw that question, and it's my mistake because I thought the question was about this particular application. Because when we initially discussed with the library representatives, the process to go through, I did suggest that they could submit the site plan at the same time that they submitted the request for the text amendment, so that they could potentially go through at the same time, with the suggestion that it would be, the only way you could do it would be to conditionally approve the site plan approval on the board accepting a change to the zoning ordinance, and then that subsequently getting published. That was laid out initially. I thought that the library was not interested in doing that process. So when I was asked the question about whether or not we had everything. I was responding to whether we had everything for the text amendment request.
Again, I have in writing where we understood that we needed conditional use based on what the township board will do at its next meeting. You have the library site plan. You've seen it because you referenced that it is compliant with the ordinance.
I have a building permit application.
And
The
it has,
site plan,
and
the site
it-
plan was never submitted. Well, I don't want to argue with you about it. I'm
and
just
it has a
explaining.
site plan submitted with it. We can go back. This meeting's recorded. I will be requesting officially on behalf of the library tomorrow morning for a copy of it because you said that you had the site plan. You said that. You stated it in the meeting and that it was compliant. Now,
I don't
again,
have,
I'm asking the planning commissioners, the people who are taxpayers to the Salem South Lyon District Library, is this your intent of a good use of your tax dollars to the library to now that we have to apparently go through thousands of more of your tax dollars when I clearly ask in writing, and again, I'm happy to provide these emails to every one of you about not only did we want to get the text amendment, we wanted conditional use. We didn't want to fight with anybody. I would argue that the library is a governmental entity, and it is. I am an elected official, just like TJ is. I'm on the ballot. I take an oath of office, just like all of you. And we didn't want to argue with the township. We wanted the quickest path to resolution. And so that's what we did. We jumped through every hoop that the township did. Imagine, I paid $2,000 for that 3-page report from Paul Montego. And if you'd like, I'd be happy to send you that receipt. $3,000, guys, for that report of your tax dollars, or excuse me, $2,000 for the report, $1,000 to have this put on your agenda. And I asked specifically in writing, because again, I'm aware that I don't always hear things correctly, especially as I age. And so I wanted it in writing, so not only could I reference it, but the rest of my board could reference it. And again, Pam understood because we talked. She understands construction business because of her family's experience, that this timing was very important to us. And then again, tonight, I hear from Paul, oh no, you didn't submit the right stuff, but he did say he's seen the site plan. He did say that it met the ordinance. So I don't want to speak to Mr. Montego. I don't care whose fault it is at this point. What I want to know is from the Planning Commission, how much more of your tax dollars do I have to spend on behalf of the library to make this a reality? And how many more delays will there be? Because again, Pam, I was very clear. I wanted this handled in one meeting if possible. And I understand what conditional use is. I've been attending Planning Commission meetings for a long time.
Linda, I think we can find a way. I will, you can speak directly to me because I know we discussed that and I know that's what we expected. And I think that we can resolve this.
Okay.
So I'm sure,
Yeah,
everybody's all on the same page and let's, I think we can get this worked out between you, Paul, and I.
Okay, just one thing, because as I said, timing was important. What's the timeline to get this resolved? In the next 24 hours, 72 hours? Can I get?
I'm thinking as soon as we're done with this meeting, let's fix the errors.
All right.
Paul, are you available after this meeting?
Thank you,
sure,
Pam.
of course.
Okay. Are you good, Linda?
I am good with it. Thank you, Pam.
Okay, no problem. Okay, any other public comments? Okay, chairperson comment? None. Thank you, everybody. We had a lot of good discussion. Adjournment is 9:08. Thank you.
Thank you.
You.
Thanks, guys.
Night,
Enjoy your week.
Good to see you all.
All right, bye.